like button if that was cool. First-person shooters are very dependent on a few key things to ensure long and extended gaming sessions from their players. And one of those key things is the maps. The overall design aesthetic, the lane structure, and the map flow all greatly contribute to whether or not a player is going to spend more time in the game and in fact return. Now enter XDefiant. How do their maps fare? If you want to find out, give this video a like. My name is Buckeye, and welcome to XDefiant Guides. If you guys have been playing first-person shooters or really any game out there that requires you to run around on a map, you would know that a map can absolutely make or break a game. If you're playing a map and you just straight up do not enjoy the map that you're playing on, chances are you may not play for very long. You may get really frustrated and you may never come back to it. But if the flip side is true and the map is very enjoyable, then chances are you're going to not only remember that map greatly, but you're also going to come back time after time after time and spend even more time in the game and on that map. Think about this like your house. If your house is extremely cluttered and dirty and a lot of things are broken and it's not an enjoyable time to be in your home, then chances are you may have a negative overall perception of your home and you may not feel very happy and it may affect your mood, and that's just not a good situation to be in. But on the flip side, if you have really nice landscaping and the house is very cozy and you've designed it really well, everything kind of flows well, things work, the refrigerator isn't broken, the faucet isn't dripping, and everything is working well, then chances are you will feel happier and you will have a better mood about your house and you will be proud and happy to live there. Well, that is the same when it comes to a map in a multiplayer game. If you are playing on a map and it really feels nice to be there, then you're going to look forward to getting back there again. And oftentimes, a good map will help you to actually forgive some negative elements of the game as well. Now, when speaking of these types of maps that are really good and successful, let's examine a couple of games that have showcased this in the past. The first one that comes to my mind is Call of Duty Black Ops 2. This is easily my favorite Call of Duty game that there is, and if you remember, there are a lot of really solid maps in that game that have since come back in more recent iterations of the Call of Duty franchise. A couple of examples could be maps like Standoff, Hijacked, Express, Raid, Plaza. I mean, these are some really awesome maps that have a lot of key areas that people really enjoy being on. They are very memorable. The design is well executed, and it's a joy to be on the maps. Another game with very successful maps is Halo 3. Do you guys remember playing on Guardian or Narrows or Last Resort? I mean, these are some really solid maps in Halo 3. I absolutely loved playing on these maps, and they greatly contributed to my extended play sessions and the fact that some of these maps have been made over and over again in more recent editions of Halo. Counter-Strike is a great example of where they have a handful of maps that have been around for a long time, and if these maps were not good, why would anybody play the game? These are like core staples of Counter-Strike. Dust is a great example of that. Dust 2, oh my lord. I mean, talk about an iconic map in Counter-Strike. That map's been around for a long time, and it's been very successful. And again, that's an example of a good success story between a game and a map. And if we take our step back to Call of Duty, we can think about Verdansk. Everybody absolutely loves Verdansk, the initial map that was brought into the world with Warzone back in the Modern Warfare 2019 timeframe. Verdansk is universally loved by pretty much every Warzone player ever. But if we were to flip the table here and talk about some maps and some games that were not very successful, let me first start off with Halo Reach. I know this is going to be a hot take here. Go ahead and let me know in the comments down below why I'm wrong, but I'm going to tell you why I'm right here, okay? Overall, the map design in Halo Reach, in my opinion, was very poor. A large amount of maps, or at the very least, when I think about the maps in Halo Reach, what I think of is gray. Literally, that's what I think about. I think of the shade of gray, because there are so many maps that fill up Halo Reach that are Forge maps, and it's just all gray palettes. They're not very fun, they don't stand out, and in my opinion, Halo Reach suffered greatly from the map design. I think you can attribute some of the problematic natures to some of the maps in Halo Reach with the armor abilities that they brought into that game, with both the jetpack as well as sprint. They had to design things differently based off of those armor abilities, and I think that that significantly hurt the overall map design of Halo Reach. Next up would be Modern Warfare 2 2022, and I'm going to tell you right now, that is the biggest problem that I had with this game last year. The maps were unbelievably horrible. They were so bad. I basically played 2 to 3 maps the entire year. I mean, literally, I played Shoot House 24/7. every time it was available. And then they brought a new map in like Season 5 Reloaded. I can't remember what it was called, but it was a white map. It looked really good and it played really well, and I enjoyed that one. But basically every other map in the game was awful. It was so bad. And if you ask anybody who played Modern Warfare 2, they'll probably tell you the same thing. The maps were really bad in that game and completely turned people off from even playing the game. And, you know, coincidentally, I think Al Mazrah probably was another map that people did not really enjoy all that much. I think overall, Al Mazrah is kind of a mid map. Not the worst thing in the world, but certainly not as good as some maps like Verdansk. Now, the really cool thing is that XDefiant is going to be getting a bunch of brand new maps post-launch on top of what it's already launching with. And if you want to catch news about when we know about those various maps and seeing gameplay and cool footage about those maps, then subscribe to this YouTube channel. I've got you covered. We got all the XDefiant content right here on the channel. Make sure to subscribe. Now, talking about maps that are both good and bad, and some of these memorable games for both of those reasons, being good and bad, let's talk about why it's really important for XDefiant to have something that sets itself apart, because the FPS community is incredibly competitive, and there are so many competitors out there. You've got games like Call of Duty, Halo, Battlefield, Valorant, Counter-Strike, Rainbow Six Siege, Destiny, and the list goes on. We've even got the finals coming soon. So as you can see, there are a number of areas that if somebody likes playing an FPS game, they can go here, or they can go there, or they can go there. They don't need necessarily to come to XDefiant. So with that being said, XDefiant needs to set itself apart. It needs to grab the attention of the masses and let them know that, hey, we've got a really great product over here, and we know that if you come over here, you're gonna have a great time. But you need to make sure that when those people do come over here and try you out, because you are a free-to-play game, by the way, so it is inevitable that people will try you out, you need to make sure you hook, line, and sinker them. You gotta get them into the game and into the community and set there. And one of the best ways to do that is to have a really good set of maps. And the good thing is that we've talked about it before here on the channel, and people have talked about it in the community, but the maps in XDefiant are very solid. And that is one area that can absolutely set XDefiant apart. Unfortunately, it's not as applicable this year with Modern Warfare 3, because I think by and large, the maps in Modern Warfare 3 are very good in comparison to Modern Warfare 2, where the maps were terrible. So if you were to compare XDefiant and Modern Warfare 2, well, XDefiant would be far and away better in terms of map design. Modern Warfare 3, a bit better. So I think it's a little more even in this race now. But if you want to see what the maps look like on Modern Warfare 3 and on XDefiant, then make sure to follow me on my Twitch channel. The link to that is in the description. I stream every single week, Friday and Saturday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern time. Go follow me on Twitch. I'd really appreciate it. We love hanging out with the community. You don't want to miss it. Now, I've been talking about it and hinting about it this entire video, but I want to get into the nitty-gritty here about the maps in XDefiant and what actually makes these maps really good. I decided to take a look at some of these maps and really examine the various aspects of them and what makes them really good in different areas. So let's go ahead and break those down. Today, we're specifically going to be examining a few different maps in the game. We're going to be talking about Attica Heights, Arena, and Noodle Plex. These are three maps that I believe are very strong maps in XDefiant and really give a good example of the overall map design philosophy in XDefiant. If you look at these maps, mostly the philosophies in these maps cater to the additional maps in the rest of the game. And I think this is a good example of the overall philosophy and why I think in general, the maps in XDefiant are way better than what we've seen in some more recent shooters and actually are very similar to some older successful shooters out there. So let me break down a few areas of each of these maps, starting with Attica Heights. First and foremost, I think if you guys have played Call of Duty Black Ops 2 and you've played XDefiant, and you've played Attica Heights, I think you will probably agree with me when I say that Attica Heights is a little reminiscent of Hijacked from Black Ops 2. I mean, obviously it's not the same map, but it just has a feeling that's very similar to that game. There's a lot of movement that happens on the right and left side of the map going vertical. It's also got the sort of white wall aesthetic, and I don't know why, but it just has a little bit of that kind of feeling to me, which just from a nostalgia standpoint helps me to appreciate the map and enjoy my experience. But nostalgia aside, what I really like about Attica Heights is that there is open areas and very good lines of sight. A commonality that you will notice as I continue here with these maps is the limited clutter in these maps. Attica Heights has basically no clutter whatsoever. If you really pay attention to the gameplay on these maps, It's very clean and very defined. You know what the pathways are. There's not much stuff that's in your way, and it doesn't block your vision. Another really big thing that I've noticed is that XDefiant, at least in some of these maps specifically, they don't have many windows. Attica Heights, as far as I can tell, has no windows at all, has no windows and has no doors. And I know that this is something that's been talked about recently with Call of Duty, how they added some doors into Modern Warfare 3. And also a lot of the problems with Modern Warfare's recently has been the overabundance of windows in their maps, giving way too many places for you to get shot. Well, in Attica Heights, there are no windows. And the other thing that I think is really important here as well is the fact that Attica Heights is pretty much only 2 levels. You could maybe make a point for being like 2.5 levels, but in terms of the verticality, it's very simple. There's your main top portion of the map, and then you have the B site in Occupy, which is on the bottom portion of the map. So in its most general sense, this map has 2 vertical levels to it. But the important thing is that when you're on one level, you only have a very specific area where you're gonna be actually engaging with somebody on the level above you, and that's if you're at B site, which makes it a very contested location on the map and is really what helps your team win if you're able to hold down the B site. But outside of that, you're really not going to be ever shooting somebody that's 3 stories above you or 3 stories below you. And in my mind, that makes it way, way better of a design. All right, now let's talk about Noodle Plex here. If you guys have been following for a long time, you know that my favorite map in XDefiant is Noodle Plex, and I'll tell you a few reasons why. I think the first thing that stands out when you look at Noodle Plex, and I think anybody who's played this map can agree on the fact that Noodle Plex is very bright, it's very vibrant, and it's very colorful. And that is something that has been missing from Call of Duty for a while now. It's a lot of gray and green and a lot of gloominess. But in Noodle Plex, it's very bright, it's very colorful, it's very happy and bombastic. It's a very fun atmosphere. And that goes into the fun design direction. You've got this whole, like, slide thing happening inside one of the buildings. There's all these colorful design elements in the map. It's just kind of fun. And that's something that's been missing from a lot of games recently, and I'm glad that it's in this map and in this game. And along with those design elements, it's open. There's very, very limited clutter. The pathways are clearly defined. There are, once again, basically no windows. I think there's maybe 1 window like on the entire map, and it's on the left side inside the building. You guys probably know what I'm talking about. But again, there's limited visual obstruction. There's no windows, basically. There's no doors. Everything is open and clear. And once again, this map is also, I mean, Lord, you could honestly say it's probably 1 level because the variation in levels is not very much at all, but we'll say it's 2 levels. But most of the map takes place on 1 level. Again, limiting that verticality, right? So when you're going around the map, it's predictable. You kind of understand where enemy players are probably going to be, and it's not chaotic. And to me, that is a massive boon for the game, knowing where players are going to be so you can prepare for your engagements. You don't feel like if you step around a corner, there's 16 different glints pointing at you. All right, now with this in mind, let's talk about Arena now, because that's another really, really great map, and I think probably most of the community's favorite map in the game so far, I would say, is probably Arena. And a couple specific things about Arena as well are that it's very colorful. It's a more dim map, right? Because it's taking place inside of a basketball arena, but it is colorful, right? It's not just gray, it's not just green, it's not just blue. It's got all the colors in the spectrum. It's got basketballs on the map. It's got cool, fun design elements on the map. Again, there's no windows. It's got a strong map flow. It's a very 3-lane methodical map. It's got the 2 sides. It's got the very contested middle portion of the map. It's very predictable. You kind of know where players are going to be. And honestly, this map, in terms of the design, it kind of reminds me of Rush, DLC map that came out for Black Ops 2. Let me know in the comments if you remember that map. And once again, the map has 2 levels. Limited verticality. 2 levels. That's it. And of these 3 maps, by the way, I would actually say that Arena is probably the most chaotic of these 3 maps, but it's also the smallest of these 3 maps. And I think given the name Arena, it kind of makes sense to have that sort of nature. But even in the chaos, it's still very predictable and it's very fun. It flows well. Now, of course, these are only 3 maps of all of the maps that are coming out in XDefiant, but I think that this paints a really solid picture of the overall map design philosophy in XDefiant and why I believe it makes it very, very strong and compelling. There are 3 key pillars, if you will, to what I believe the the map design philosophy is in XDefiant. The first one is limited verticality. In most of the maps in XDefiant, you're going to be on 1 to 2 levels, and I don't know if any of the maps go even up to the 3rd level. I'm pretty sure most of the maps are 1, 2 max levels. And even when there is an additional level, it's not everywhere on the map. The second pillar, I would say, is limited visual obstruction. There's not a bunch of clutter and a bunch of chaos happening on these maps. And honestly, they're pretty simple in terms of the various elements that they put in the game to obstruct things. And honestly, I'd say that the overall design is pretty simple, right? It's a wall here, a car here, a tree here. It's not that overly designed, it's pretty simple, but there's a huge emphasis on making sure that what is there is clean, it's defined, and it's not inhibiting your ability to see. I don't think I've heard anybody who has said that it's hard to see their enemies in XDefiant. And what I believe the third pillar is a very strong map flow that gives you predictable movement, and you will know where the enemy players are going to be coming based off of high engagement routes on the map. You know that this is a hot zone for enemy players and for team players to be going around. It's pretty easy to pick up on what that is in the maps in XDefiant. And I think that's absolutely a huge thing to having solid maps, because if players can hop into something and understand what is going to happen, then 2 things will happen. Number 1, the average player will have a good time, and number 2, the really good players will be able to master it, and there will be a skill level in that area. So this is why I believe that the maps in XDefiant have a very, very strong map design philosophy. The designs are genius in my mind, and even some of the not great maps in XDefiant are still really good when compared to some other games out there. And that's why I'm so excited for the post-launch content and when we finally get our hands on XDefiant once more. And if you want to find out some details about XDefiant and where it's at right now, and perhaps when we'll be able to get our hands on the game here soon, then make sure you check out this video on screen now.